Welcome to Surviving the Side Hustle, the podcast for high performers who've gone all in, but still feeling a little stuck. I'm your host, Rob Tracy, coach, speaker, and creator of the Prime Performance Process. If you're a solopreneur, small business owner, or just launched your side hustle and you're tired of grinding with no momentum, this is for you. Every week, we bring you guests that have broke the code, generated momentum, and finally got unstuck. And we're diving into their stories, their struggles, and their secrets to generating massive momentum in both their personal and professional lives. We don't do fluff here. We do frameworks, real talk, and share the kind of insights that get you unstuck for good. Welcome, and let's get rolling. But before we dive in, I gotta remind you, if you're overwhelmed, spinning your wheels, or just tired of hustling without the results, it's time for a Prime Performance Strategy session. In this free call, we'll zoom out on your life and business, identify the real reason you're feeling stuck, and build a game plan to help you reclaim your confidence, energy, and gain some clarity so you can get back to doing what you set out to do. Lead, grow, and thrive. This isn't surface level coaching. It's a system built on resilience, intentionality, clarity, and alignment. So head over to survivingthesidehustle.com/free call to grab your spot today. Again, that's survivingthesidehustle.com/free call. Let's get going and help you look good, feel good, and do great things. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. Today, we've got a pretty interesting conversation ready for us because today we are visited by a good friend here, guest Michael Cobb. So Mike actually was international entrepreneur. Sorry, Mike.
That's right.
International entrepreneur and investor with more than 3 decades of experience building businesses across Central and South America. Mike is taking what started as side projects and overseas opportunities and turned them into long-standing enterprises in banking, development, and international investing. So in today's conversation, we're probably going to dive into some long-term thinking, entrepreneurial leadership, the realities of global business, and what it really takes to build something that lasts. Man, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good. I assume we have 8 hours for this conversation. That's a lot of stuff, man. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned that it's getting prepared at the side hustle thing, right? I already in my head had thought about like the connection between how I got started internationally in this side hustle piece. So that's great that you brought it up, and we'll certainly get to that. But I'm really happy to be here. I know you do an incredible job of getting the good word out to entrepreneurs and what it is like to struggle through, you know, that side hustle. And maybe it becomes the full hustle, maybe it doesn't, right? It can always be the side hustle, but it's great because it lets us really unleash our entrepreneurial energies and creativity and focus them on something productive, right?
Yeah. I mean, side hustle it's never really the main, obviously it's not the main focus, but it is still more times than not a passion project for a lot of individuals. And
absolutely,
that's kind of where I'd like to kind of dive in with you first here, is because I know you've spent over 30 years working in Central and South America. So how did you even get down there?
So yeah, went with a buddy of mine who's a lawyer in Pittsburgh. He sets up asset protection trusts for doctors, right? Against the frivolous lawsuit, the ambulance chasing lawyers, right? He says, I'm your defense against the ambulance chasing lawyers, right? So he was doing a lot of asset protection work in Belize. I went with him on vacation, and whatever. Second time back, I'm like, man, we ought to look for some real estate. This place is cool. This was back in 1993 and in early ~94, that Christmas, high season, right? Cold weather, Pittsburgh area, and so we ended up buying a couple condos, and what was interesting, and then he was working, he was down there, and I'd go with him once in a while. I'd go my own and we'd hang out. But what was really interesting was we had bought in the second building from the ocean, like you can imagine a horseshoe shape. The first building's right on the ocean. We were second one in, so beautiful views of the ocean, right? And he'd already built one of these horseshoes with 11 buildings, and we were in the next horseshoe. So we were in the second building. The third, fourth, and fifth building were in some stage of construction. And over the course of like 6-8 months, we never saw anybody working on those next 3 buildings, right? And so we're just talking, his name's Jim. So we're talking to Jim. Jim, what's the deal, man? Why aren't you finishing these condos? Obviously, it's your business. You're a developer. Build a condo, sell it, make money.
Yeah.
And he told us the story, and he said, "Yeah, that works, except that I have to finance most of my buyers." And we're like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you guys paid full price, and we'd negotiated a 20% discount, right?" So he was like, "What's the best deal?" And he said, "You're going to pay in full." We said, "Yeah, we'll pay in full." And he said, "I'll give you a 20% discount." But the vast majority of his clients could put 20, 30 grand down, but they needed financing. The problem is no bank in the US would finance property in Belize, and no Belize bank would finance a foreigner, right? So there was this big hole in the marketplace. And when Jim came down there with this, $4 or $5 million to buy the land and build the buildings, whatever, he didn't know what he didn't know. He didn't know that there was no financing for the buyers. So he ended up financing a bunch of people. And so we're just hanging out by the pool talking to him one day and finding all this out. And my business partner just looks up at him and he goes, "Would you sell your paper for a 20% discount?" And I'll never forget Jim's face. He just kind of cocked his head. He goes, "Yes." Just like that. And a business was born. Like literally in that moment, a business was born. And, we had to figure out how to go raise money. We had to figure out sort of the issues of title and stuff like that. But there was a need in the marketplace for somebody to put this financing in place to help developers and help consumers. We saw that need and we built a business around it. So our very first business in the region started in 1994, and it was a mortgage company. But it was a side hustle. To come back to the side hustle, like I was still in the computer business in Washington, D.C. for another 8 years. I left the computer business in 98. So for like another 3.5, 4 years, I was headed down there, whatever, once every other month for a long weekend, meet with developers, maybe meet with clients, whatever it was, and buy notes from developers. So it was a great side hustle. It was in a wonderful location. I always loved going down there. And it was something that you could really do from anywhere. It was maybe one of the first kind of remote businesses back in 94. It didn't matter, where I was. I could do it from home. So anyway, that's the birthing of the businesses right there.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the patience and the long-term vision that you had. I feel like a lot of people starting a side hustle or even starting a business in general, they get caught up in that like get rich quick kind of thing. Like, oh, I gotta get to the destination immediately. Blah 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 blah. Like, how did you stay so grounded, and where did that longer term vision kind of come from?
Well, great question. In fact, great observation, right? It's a great question, but the observation's the key point, right? If we have to have a longer term focus, if we're trying to get rich quick, they just don't happen. I mean, very often, right? You might buy a lottery ticket and win, but I mean, like, right? Doesn't happen, right? I love a quote. The only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary, right? And so we have to do the work, and a lot of times we have to do a lot of work that we don't even know that will pay off. When I was in the computer business, I would go to the office hour and a half, 2 hours early every morning, basically to beat the rush hour. Like I didn't want to sit in my car. So I'd drive, 15 minutes to the office instead of an hour to the office, right? But I had to go really early. And I would read all these trade rags for an hour and a half, 2 hours every morning, might even stay late in the evening, same kind of thing. And I remember the other salespeople telling me, like, "Cobb, like you're in here reading all this stuff. How much of this stuff is actually helpful to you?" I said, "Probably only 1%. The problem is I don't know which 1%, right?" And so this idea of working and time and commitment to something that we don't know if it's even relevant is critically important, right? We have to do those things because, Lady Luck walks down the hallway of life and knocks on everybody's door. But we have to be ready to open it, right? We have to be prepared to open that door and accept the fortune that we all get. We all get fortune all the time, but are we ready to open the door and accept it and turn it into something, right? And when we do, it is generally a longer term process. And so with the mortgages, right, we're buying notes from developers, and the notes might have been 10-year notes. They might have been a year or 2 or 3 in. I mean, they were matured a little bit, but like already right out of the gates, we're looking at, 5, 7, even 9 or 10 year kind of payback, right?
Mhm.
So we were already in this long term kind of mentality, and I think it's the right mentality because look, a couple things. when we start something new, which a side hustle sometimes is, a mortgage, I was in the computer business. I knew nothing about mortgages, right? Finance, right? So there's a steep learning curve, and you can't look, the saying is it takes 10,000 hours to become a master, right? It takes 10,000 hours of something to become a master at it. Well, if you work 2,000 hour, years, right? That's 5 years. If you work 3,000 hour, it's 3 years, whatever, right? You do the math on it, right? And so, but you can't accelerate it beyond the hours in a day, right? So by the time you become a master, say 2, 3, 4 years, I'm a big believer in working 60, 70, 80 hour weeks, especially if you love what you do, right? If you love what you do, it's not work. I don't work very much, honestly. I love what I do. I play most of the time, and I get compensated for the play. I get compensated for the enjoyment that I have, right? So I don't mind plugging in 60, 70, 80 hours some weeks, whatever it is, right? But on that track, it's still 2, 3, 4 years to become a master. So if you're thinking like any time frame shorter than say 3, 4 years, like you're just leaving so much money on the table because you're not a master yet, right?
Mhm.
At year 4, say for example, now you're a master. Like, okay, now we can like see the nuances, right? So much of business is nuance. It's the little tiny little things, but that they expand like this and give you huge opportunities. But we have to be a master. So, yeah, time and focus on the longer term is critically important. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you had mentioned about how Lady Luck walking down, knocking on everybody's doors. Because I often say to a lot of people, either workshops or clients and such, that luck really favors the prepared while missed opportunity haunts the unprepared.
I like the second. Yeah, that's good. I like
Yeah,
that.
thank you,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. And it's important to make sure that you're doing what you can. But you also mentioned how you had to read all of this information and you weren't sure which 1% was going to help out. And with entrepreneurship and starting different things, there's so much uncertainty there and there's a lot to juggle. So as things are kind of evolving and growing for you, because I like you're operating, there's banking, developments, and all these different things. And the teak plantation, like I know that stuff too, we got to get into. So like, how did you juggle so much and know what, like which ball to catch when, I guess?
Yeah, great question. So, right. So the finance, let me just sort of roll the little bit of the story. The finance rolled into development because I was the collateral guy, right? My business partner, he's a lawyer. He's deals, contracts, money, titles, blah, 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 right? He's that side of the business. I'm the boots on the ground guy. And so when I was out looking at the collateral that we were going to buy the mortgages from, right, I would see these incredibly well-built structures. I mean, concrete rebar, hurricane strapping. So like they were really well built. The problem is like there'd be a light over in the bathroom would be back here, right? So your face would be in shadow, or the countertops would be too low and you'd bang your knees when you tried to sit at a kitchen counter, right? Or door handles. I saw this all the time. Every door handle in a house or a condo was at a different height. But my favorite one, and I wish I would have had the presence of mind to take a picture of it. I walked into a condo once and into the living room. Like you walk into the living room, there was one outlet on one wall with 2 outlet strips with extension cords to outlet strips to get power around this living room, right? They put one outlet in a living room. And so I'm talking to my buddy. I'm like, Joel, man, like this is all free to fix. Like we could actually build the same high quality product, right? It was built well, but we could build it to an expectation, not even a standard, but an expectation of a North American client. Light over here so your face is in the light, the outlets and blah, 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 blah. And that was the genesis of our development company, which we started in 96, a couple years later. And so that happened. But then in 98, we started to read about reforestation incentives in Panama. So we were active in Belize. We were looking at property in Honduras, Roatan specifically, and Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama to expand our development and finance business. And we came across this reforestation incentive program that Panama was putting in place. And so we, in 98, we started looking for property. In 99, we bought a 100-acre farm. We planted 100 acres of teak trees. And I remember people, I'm here in Shepherdstown. This is my home. And right across the street's the Bavarian Inn. And the Rotary meets there every Tuesday morning. And so I'd be going over to Rotary, but I'd be missing a lot of meetings because I'd be down in Panama looking for the farm or whatever I was doing. And I remember the people at the breakfast table just giving me just a wrath of crap, right? Like, oh, Cobb, what are you doing? Like, you're what? You're planting teak trees in Panama and you got to wait 25 years to get a harvest? And I'm like, yep, here's why. Because in 25 years, I'm either going to need the money and I'm going to be really glad I did this, or in 25 years, I'm not going to need the money and I'm going to be really glad I did this. And here we are today. I mean, 27 years because, whatever, lagging a little bit, but I had to get a sawmill built, right? And so I'm going to answer your question in just a second that you asked. But so 2 years ago, we started to build a sawmill. We hired a guy to build it and we built it. It's up and running. We have our first container of lumber is headed up to Colorado at the end of this month for the first distribution of these trees that we are now harvesting that we planted 27 years ago, right? And it's really exciting. But to answer your question, I'm an entrepreneur. And I'm actually, I mean, when you say this, it doesn't say. See, I'm actually a really humble guy. That doesn't sound humble when you say it. There's some irony in that, right? But anyway, but I know what I don't know, and I approach a new business or new anything really, but I approach a new thing, business in this case, with absolute humility, making the assumption that I actually don't know anything about it, and if I don't know anything, I just learn and learn. So that curiosity, that reading all the time, right? But the key, our key to success has been with the mortgage company, with our development company, with our timber company, and now the sawmill, finding really highly competent, technically competent people in that industry to run that business for us. I think I'm actually a pretty good leader. I think I'm okay. On my best day, I'm an okay manager because those are two different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leadership and management, very different. I think I'm a pretty good leader. I think on my best day, I'm only an okay manager, right? And I don't have technical expertise in finance and banking, construction and development, timber, all mill, right? I don't have any technical expertise in that at all, but we can go out and recruit and hire and then inspire, right? Which is what leadership really is, the inspiration of our team to execute well on what they are technically competent to do. And that doesn't mean it doesn't come with lots of challenges and problems and bumps in the road and, all that stuff too, right? But it's always about identifying, hiring, and inspiring the right people to carry out the mission of your business. And so, which ball to handle, sometimes I call it like plate spinning, right? I mean, I can run around the stage and keep all the different, 10 different plates spinning, which I do pretty good. The problem is once in a while, 8 of the 10 are all needing to spin at the same time, and that gets a little hectic. But generally, it doesn't really happen that way very often. And so just move from business to business, talking with our people. We have set meetings every week, 2 or 3 times a week. We're talking to each of our business leaders, our executive management team. How's it going this week? What's up? It can be a 5-minute call. Nothing, Mike. We're good. I mean, great, done. Right. So constant communication and availability. So, but they also know that they can call me at 10 o'clock at night, and I'll pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what's up?" Right. And I think all those things are important. But to answer the question, Rob, it's always about people, finding and hiring the technical expertise you need to execute whatever it is that business requires.
Yeah, and you had mentioned something about like understanding or knowing that you don't know everything, and that reminds me of like the very last day of undergrad, and I had just packed up the house. I was the last person to leave, and I remember driving home, talking to myself, saying like, "Man, that's it. I've got a bachelor's in kinesiology. I am the top of the industry. I know everything there is." And I was like, wow, I'm not going to ever learn anything ever again. And then 2 weeks later, first day of my internship, I realized that I don't know anything. Wow, like I got a
Isn't that
lot to
beautiful?
learn. And that started me on my pathway of like, okay, what do I want to be doing? How do I want to do this? That inspired me to go back to grad school and all these other things. And now I live this life of kind of learning and looking for more
Yeah,
stuff that I don't know, because that helps me smooth things out a little bit. But I know from a previous conversation we had, you had said something along the lines of relating business to like roller skating uphill.
that's
And
right. Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
yeah.
that was hilarious and like spot on. Could you explain a little bit on like how that mindset has helped you stay grounded over the decades, over the challenges and everything you've come across so far?
Absolutely right. I think that you know business for sure, right? When it's your own business, right? There's no such thing as coasting, right? Or if there is, it's a brief moment of coasting. It's roller skating up a steep hill, and and so you've just got to be working on pumping, right? And you might take a little break, but pretty soon, I mean, it's quick, right? You're headed backwards. So, like this idea of advancement, facing forward, always facing forward. If you're the owner of the business or the leader of the business, right, you have to be facing forward. Like there's nothing you can do for the company when you're turned around backward except maybe trip and fall, right? That's why, like if you're a sole proprietorship, then you do have to kind of do all of the elements. Although I'm a big fan of outsourcing. Look, find somebody in India or the Philippines or somewhere, they speak great English, and let them do your IT stuff, right? Find somebody that can do some of your, QuickBooks or whatever it is, right? I mean, your time as a business leader is almost always better spent focusing forward on opportunity, roller skating uphill, and you can outsource the admin and other things to, and the world has become so easy to do that. It is so easy and so affordable to outsource the things that you're not good at. Now, you might have a certain curiosity. You'd be like, oh, this AI stuff really fascinates me, and you want to dig into it. Great. You've picked a thing that you're going to face forward on that advances your business. Or maybe it's the accounting. Maybe you love the accounting aspect, but the admin part, the website stuff, the IT stuff, other things, you can kind of pick, but we can't be all things at all time. And we certainly can't be good at all things, right? It's just not who we are as people. So facing forward always, and understanding that there's never a coast, right? If we're not forging forward, we're going backwards. And it may just be in relation. I love Einstein, right? Theory of relativity, right? We may not be quote unquote going backwards compared to like ourselves, but compared to our competitors who are continuing to roller skate forward, like we're going backwards. Like, it's relative, right? Are they going forward or are we going backwards, right? So I think that's the key. Always staying on, always pushing, always forging ahead. And as the leader, business leader, facing forward almost at all times, right? Almost at all times.
Yo, what's up? Sorry for interrupting. It's me, Rob. If you've been listening and thinking, man, I just know I'm capable of so much more, but something's just really not clicking, well, I've got something for you. It's called the Prime Performance Personality Quiz. And in just a few minutes, you'll uncover what's actually slowing you down. So whether it's a mindset block, energy drain, or a lack of clarity, this quiz is going to give you specific insights to help you build momentum again. Again, this quiz is free, fast, and honestly, freakishly accurate. So take it now over at survivingthesidehustle.com/quiz and stop spinning, start winning today. So, because you're kind of talking about face it forward, seeing what's interesting, kind of hiring out, finding good players to play on the team for you. If someone's out there and they're like, okay, well, there's a lot of hats to be worn, there's a lot of different things. What kind of advice would you have to them for helping them find their zone of excellence? And then how do you stay in that zone?
Yeah. I'm guessing that most entrepreneurs probably have a sense of adventure, right? They have a strong sense of curiosity and usually are pretty creative too, right? And I think the melding of those generally, and high energy, right? High energy as well, right? I think the melding of that kind of is that entrepreneurial piece. And if we find true joy, in something, right, that usually aligns with our strongest set. I don't know if you know Myers-Briggs. Do you know the Myers-Briggs based on Jungian, right? Okay. So you can take the little quickie online for free, right? I don't know, it takes 10, 15 minutes to answer 50 questions or whatever. It's great because what it tells us is there are 16 typologies according to the Myers-Briggs and coming out of the Jungian framework, right? And so we have our strongest suit, like about cards, right? Out of these 16 possible combinations, 4 letters, 16 combinations, we have our strongest suit, which is where we love to be. We're really good at it. And there are certain professions that align with each of these 16 characteristics. But conversely, we have our shadow set, which is the exact opposite 4 letters, which we are not very good at. We probably don't enjoy it. In fact, most of us probably avoid it. Why would we, I'm right-handed. Why would I try to get up and throw a ball left-handed? I'm stupid and I'm not very good at it, right? So I'm right-handed. So that's my strong suit, left-handed not. And so the Myers-Briggs is a great tool for folks listening. Take that quickie little test online and then understand. But I would probably dig in and get a couple books on it. It's a powerful tool to help us understand who we are, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and then we can supplement our weaknesses. Mine's accounting. I mean, I think I'm an ENTP, right? Extroverted, intuitive thinking, perceiving, right? So an ISFJ is probably an accountant, I think. I don't know. But I mean, it's my opposite, right? I don't like it. I don't do it. I've always outsourced it, right? Or insourced it to someone we hire, right? But I'm not doing it. We find our joy. We find the things we're really good at, right? The Myers-Briggs will help us maybe identify that. Although intuitively, I think we always know what we enjoy and what we're good at, right? And the things we're not, see how you can outsource it, right? Or delegate it, right? If you have an organization with a couple people, somebody probably has the aptitude and the desire to do that, right? I think that's the key, because when we do the things we love, we don't work at all, right? We're not working. If we're doing it because we love to do it, we're not working, right? And therefore we can give it more energy, more passion, and all of a sudden, 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, bam, just goes by and you're like, whoa, what happened? I like, right? The zone. I mean, we talk about that in sports, right? You're in the zone, right? I mean, when we're in the zone, we are at our best. And I think when we're at our best professionally, we do a couple things. One, we serve others the best, right? Zig Ziglar, great sales trainer. If we help enough other people get what we want, if we help enough other people get what they want, we can have what we want, right? And I think Zig understood it very, very well. He says, look, you got to serve others. Find a need and serve it well. And if we serve enough other people, then we can have what we want, because we're in business, we make a profit, right? For that service or product, whatever it is. And so when we're in our zone, we do the best job of serving others. And when we do that, we can earn a fee for doing that, and that's our profit. That's our business. So I think my advice is identify what you love, what you're passionate about, what you would do for free. Find what you would do for free. Find what you do for free. And if you can turn that into a business, right, even better, even better.
Yeah, I love that. Anybody listening, go check out the Myers-Briggs. There's the DISC, Strength Finder, all these other different tools that are out there. And then in addition to taking those assessments and quizzes, just Google some different books, and there's plenty of material out there to kind of read up, to kind of figuring out where your zone of genius is and whatnot.
Yeah,
But
DISC is a good one, by the way. I like DISC too. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of books, actually, another great book to kind of check out is this How to Buy Your Home Overseas. And I got to ask you, because you told me that you had started this just as a guide, just as something to help somebody out, correct?
Right. I started it 25 years ago as the Consumer Resource Guide, right? And it was just a handbook that we would hand out at conferences or email to people as a PDF, because we want people to transact well overseas. When people have a great experience, they tell 10 people. When they have a horrible experience, they tell 100 people, right? And so selfishly, myself and a bunch of my colleagues in the industry, we are committed to helping people transact smartly, safely, and well overseas. So they tell the 10 people about a great experience, not 100 people what a disaster it was. And the challenge, Rob, is that when we go outside our home country, we are foreign. We're in a place foreign, right? And we don't know the rules. And the problem for most people is we aren't humble enough, right? We don't recognize that we don't know what we don't know. But actually, even more important, we have to forget what we think we know. Like assumptions that would hold true in the US or Canada might or might not hold true somewhere else. And one example is in Latin America, many very expensive homes and condos, $500,000, $1 million homes and condos, don't have hot water in the bathrooms. And you just shake your head, be like, what? Right? And the only way you know, see if I have it here, if it's the picture. No, I don't. Anyway, the only way you know is you have to literally get down on your hands and knees and look under the sink to see if there's two pipes coming out of the wall, a hot and a cold. Because what a lot of times you'll actually see, and it's in my book, there's a picture of it, is a cold water pipe coming out of the wall with a Y splitter so that both of the beautiful Delta faucet up top, it looks beautiful, right? They're both cold because there's one pipe, cold water, and the showers are cold. And so one of the things, this is an assumption, like why would we ever think, well, duh, it's a $500,000 house. Of course it has hot water. Maybe not, right? And so the book, right, and the Consumer Resource Guide, but the book, we have 30 questions like that we help people kind of think through, because ultimately there's 100 questions or 500 questions or 500 things we have to think about. But the goal of the book, when it went from a Consumer Resource Guide to a book, the overreaching goal of the book was to help people change how they think, right? To become far more humble, to forget their assumptions, and to largely understand that they're moving from the land of seller beware, right? Because that's what it is. US, Canada, like if I buy a junky car, I can take it back to the dealership, the lemon law. I get to return the car and get my money back, right? Like that does not happen in the developing world. You buy a junky car, sayonara, baby, it's yours. Have fun. Adios, right? It's yours. And there are no Ralph Naders or no real regulations to protect the consumer. And so we're moving from seller beware to buyer beware, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm okay with it, right? But we as North American consumers aren't prepared to transact in that environment. We don't know how to transact in that because we're so used to being protected by laws and regulations and, advocacy groups and things like that. So the overarching principle of the book is, how do we change how we think when we transact overseas, right? With lots of, 30 examples and then chapters on culture shock and title. There's other things in there about, just lots of things. So the book's for sale on Amazon. You can order it on Amazon. But Rob, anybody who emails me through your podcast, I will send them a coupon from Amazon to download the book for free. Like, I want this book in as many people's hands as possible so that they have wonderful experiences when they transact overseas. By the way, the number of people looking overseas, pre-COVID, it was 11.6%. So 1 in 10 pre-COVID, U.S. citizens were thinking about property overseas. I just saw a Gallup poll, 40% of women between the age of 18 and 44 would move overseas today if they had the opportunity. 40% of women 18 to 44. This was a Gallup poll right in December, I think November, December of last year. And then another poll, I can't remember MBO, but they surveyed retirees, and 34% of retirees said that they would move overseas for quality of life, cost of living, and healthcare concerns. So we're talking about going from 10% of the population to about a third of the population now who are thinking about going overseas for some part of their life, maybe retirement, full-time, whatever it is. And these folks need resources. They need my book as one of the resources. They need other resources too. But if they're thinking about going overseas and now it's a third of the folks, this book will really, really help people do a much better job of transacting.
Yeah, and that's powerful too. And I believe those statistics because I don't know why, but for some reason I grew up thinking that like you couldn't live outside. You couldn't own outside of the United States. I thought you just had to be here. And now I'm speaking to more and more people who are moving out of the States and living and operating their businesses online and vacation homes and all these other things. So if somebody is listening, what is the best next step? Like besides getting the book, what is the next best step in considering property or business overseas?
Yeah. Is it okay if I tell them how to get the book? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Email me, just email us podcast, simple podcast at ecidevelopment.com. Podcast at ecidevelopment.com. Just write Mike's book in the subject line. We'll send you the coupon. You can get the book. Really, the next step for everybody, do some research, right? Online, books, whatever it is, right? But then go visit, take some trips, right? Really, there's nothing ever beats our own experience because, look, different strokes for different folks. Some people like anchovy pizza. Some people like Hawaiian pizza, right? You got to go see what it is to see if you like it. And that's a heart decision, right? That's a heart decision. I would call that a lifestyle decision. From an investment standpoint, it's a head decision, right? An investment is mostly rational because even if I hate anchovies and I own a pizza parlor, I'm going to sell anchovy pizza because it's not about what I like. It's about what my clients like, right? So at the end of the day, investment's a very different analytical process from a lifestyle purchase, which is an affective process of like or not like. Should be. It doesn't have to be, but it's best suited when lifestyle is about your heart and investments about your head, right? We can make better decisions. And so depending on what avenue somebody's looking, lifestyle is like, for example, I always say that moving overseas, you should rent before you buy. 3 months minimum, 6 months better, 1 year best, right? Rent before you buy. Minimum 3 months to a year. 6 months is maybe in the sweet spot of that. Because you don't like the first 3 months, everything's awesome. This and the angels are singing. It's all great. The next 3 months, you're kind of like, I kind of see some cracks in here or whatever. And the last 6 months, you're kind of like, yeah, okay, this is either working or it's not working. The honeymoon's over. Like, okay, yeah, I kind of know the reality, right? And if it's a lifestyle, we need that time to allow our senses to see what that really is. Investment's very different. I think an investment decision can be made in a very short trip, right? If you went down and saw some stuff, you came back, you did some due diligence on paper and checked things out, you went back one more time, like 2 trips somewhere on an investment with the time in between rationally looking at things and making sure you are doing proper due diligence is enough, because it doesn't matter whether you like it. It just matters whether other people like it or not, right? To have it be a good investment. And the other thing I would just offer as just a piece of advice is most US citizens grew up like you, right? Grew up like me, where like we never thought about being overseas. I mean, we're very provincial. Most people in the United States are very provincial. And that's fine. I think we have a great country. I mean, we have a wonderful country. I would never bet against the United States ever, right? But it's not the only country in the world. And so if we have all of our eggs in one basket, any basket, the best basket in the world, right? We still have all of our eggs in one basket. And so the piece of advice, the encouragement, maybe not advice, the encouragement I would give to people is look at owning a small percentage of your net worth, your investable net worth outside your home country. I work in Latin America. I'm very comfortable there. If somebody from the US said, I would never go to Latin America, fine, go buy a condo in Canada. Go buy something in Portugal, right? Outside your home country. Get some part of your investable net worth outside your home country. Get it into another basket, right? Because I think that's just wise and prudent for all of us. And I would encourage people to begin to explore that as a possibility, and then take some trips, right? Get some resources. And someday when it feels right, pull the trigger and do something.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And yeah, excellent advice to kind of spread things out.
Yeah,
One basket, like you said, it's even if it is the best basket in the world, it's risky because they're all there. And so I wanted to ask too, because somebody listening and they might be like, yeah, this is awesome. This is great. This is exactly what I want to do. Is there any type of people out there that maybe it's not the right fit yet, or maybe there's some signs or something like, so who is the book not for, and like who should be kind of sitting there or reading more and consuming more before they dive into this?
Yeah. If somebody has already thought about maybe buying a property overseas at any level of like, yeah, that actually sounds pretty cool. I'd like to look into that. I think at that point, my book's a good resource because it's a lot of stories. It's a lot of anecdotes. And it's not a sales document. There's nothing in there about me or there's stuff about me and my family when I lived in Nicaragua, but there's nothing about our company. There's no product. I mean, it is truly a book about how we can change how we think. And I think that for anybody who's even thought about it or, like kind of think that's cool, it's probably a good book, and it's free. Hell, I mean, I'm paying for it to give it to your listeners. So anyway, that's fine. I think if somebody's, hasn't really thought about it ever and they're whatever, maybe wanting to think about it, I'm a huge fan of, this sounds crazy. People ask me all the time, well, I'm never, I say, just buy the plane tickets. Like if somebody said to me right now, I would say, what part of the world interests you? Oh, I've always wanted to go to Europe. Great. Any part of Europe? Do you speak any of the languages? No. I'd say, okay, well, you know what? Most countries of Europe have phenomenal English speakers, especially in the major cities, right? I mean, you can get around Europe in English, no problem. I say, was there a kind of food you like? Oh, I love Italian food. Great. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home, or if they have their phone, go online right now to Kayak, and buy a plane ticket for yourself and your wife or your husband, whatever it is. Buy the plane tickets to Rome for October for a week. Just, I don't care, pick the week in October and buy the plane tickets right now. I guarantee you will go. Between now and October, you're going to figure the rest of it out. But if you buy non-refundable tickets for the third week of October to go to Rome, because you love Italian food, like, you're going to Rome, right? So I'm a big fan, and I encourage people to do that frequently. Hey, let's go online. Buy your ticket. Just buy your tickets. Usually they have a country in mind. Usually it's not so general, right? But if it's totally general, I'd say, what kind of food do you like? Oh, I like Mexican food. Great. Go to Puerto Vallarta. Go to Cancun. I don't know. Let's buy some tickets, because then you've right. No, because then you've made, and they're cheap. 6 months out, they're cheap, right? So you get the best possible price, right? And you've made the commitment. You'll figure the rest out between now and then, and you will have done something that takes you to a new area, and maybe either delivers a spirit of adventure, or for most of us, honestly, I think it reawakens a sense and spirit of adventure that, I hate to say, school and life and other things kind of, quash it, right? Curiosity and the spirit of adventure. We get a lot of people get that squeezed out of them, or whatever. And I think just the serendipity or the spontaneity of buying a plane ticket 6 months from now to Rome or Mexico or wherever it is, I think that can reignite this spirit of adventure, the sense of curiosity, and re-enliven people in some neat ways. And they may go to Italy and go, well, this place sucks. I'm never going out of US again. Well, that's a good thing to know too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, there's a great knowledge event there either way. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's so super powerful too, because it transcends just traveling and this too as well. Like, a lot of times I hear a lot of people who are excited about different projects or different like businesses and things that they want to start, and then they spend so much time like creating the plan and thinking it through, and then they just never actually take the action. So I think you're saying right there, basically just put some skin in the game, take it for a spin, see if you like it, and then
Yeah.
make decisions later on.
Right. Analysis to paralysis. It's a horrible disease that I watch a lot of people get caught up in. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming on and sharing a whole lot. Could you share with us again that email to send to?
Yeah, absolutely. Podcast at ecidevelopment.com. Just put Mike's book in the subject line. We'll get it to you. And if somebody's really serious, and this would be sort of the next level, but if somebody's really serious about doing business overseas or buying a property overseas, we offer consulting services, business consulting services. I do a lot of due diligence work for people. I actually go out and do site inspections all over Latin America and Europe to do the kind of due diligence that I know how to do for clients. So if somebody's ready for that level of help, reach out, same email, and just say, have Mike call me or something, and we'll figure it out. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. But before I let you roll, I'm going to ask you one last question here. We've kind of answered it a little bit through different pieces, but I'd like to just get a clear answer from you. If somebody listening to this episode today takes one thing away and it helps them avoid one major mistake that you've seen so many people in the past kind of make, what do you hope that mistake isn't?
What do I hope the mistake isn't?
Yeah. So what are you hoping that
Hubris. I think the solution is humility. I think that we need to be as humble as possible. There are no such things as stupid questions. I think the biggest mistake is hubris, thinking we know something that we don't know, or we understand things that we don't understand, because that leads to many different kinds of mistakes. I think in an overseas transaction, probably the most common mistake is buyer's remorse. Somebody gets excited, they buy something in an emotional state that they've not done any kind of due diligence on to see if it aligns with their investment goals, their timeline goals, lifestyle goals, whatever it happens to be. But humility and due diligence, I think, are the solution to that.
Awesome. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time today, and I love
Absolutely.
the story and the experience and the insights you shared with us. So definitely following up with you again soon, and looking forward to our next conversation. Thank you again for today.
Thank you, Rob.
And that That's it for this episode of Surviving the Side Hustle. If you found this valuable, the best way to support the show is to rate and review on Apple or Spotify. It helps get the show in front of more driven individuals just like you, and helps them discover the tools to get unstuck, break through burnout, and build something real. And you can always connect deeper with me, our guests, or grab free resources at survivingthesidehustle.com/Rob. Whether it's a strategy call, the Prime Performance Personality Quiz, some of our products, or just to check out our free content library, connect with us over at survivingthesidehustle.com/Rob. And hey, remember this, you weren't meant to just grind. You were built to grow. So stay conscious, stay committed, and keep showing up. Peace, guys.